revenues page, pretty much still the same. We increased, I talked to Lee about this, we increased the water sales for one, the water increase is included. And then the second thing we talked about was because of the replacing all these meters that we're doing now. I think because the meters are a lot more accurate, it's going to increase the revenue on that. Right now we're at 500 meters to be replaced. So hopefully by the end of when we read them again in June, we'll be at about 600 meters that will be replaced. So I think we'll see an increase there. So the accuracy of the meters.
When you put a new meter in, does the fee, is it 100% recovery for us? Like the cost of a new meter, does somebody pay at least 100% of what that cost of a new meter is?
We pay for that.
But you have to pay to have a meter set, a new meter.
For a new meter, yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, the customer pays that.
Okay, but that's a full cost recovery for us.
Right.
Okay. I didn't
This
know.
is just replacement.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were replacing with the new style meter, if we needed to change our fee for the new style meter to cover the increased cost.
New ones, when a new customer pays, we put one of those meters in. But it's not a whole lot we do. Other than that, on the revenue page, nothing really has changed. On the expenses page, I had a few changes on this as well. Water system repairs, we went up to 100,000 from 95,000. We were close to budget on this one, except the big blowout at West Indian was the big expense this year. And the next item, operating supplies, you see a big increase in that. And that's because we're going to, I want to get what they call a piercing tool for services under the road versus we have an auger now, which is not always, we can't always use it. So if I have to use a piercing tool, I have to call a contractor to use that because we don't have one. Last year, we had a contractor do 7 punches under the road. And they were about $2,500 each. That was almost $18,000 to those service, replace those services. I got a quote about, I think it was about 12 grand for the new piercing tool. And we can start doing it ourselves.
How long do they last? Well, I guess it's how much you use them.
As long as you maintain them, it'll last a long time. I don't know how many years, but yeah. As long as you keep them old, they'll keep on punching. That's the increase there. The next one would be under fuel. We increased that. This obviously because of the current situation in the world, gas prices. Come on down. I did an increase on utilities just for inflation. Increase that about $1 grand. On meters and castings, it says 2,500. That should, it says 25,000. That should be 26,000. This will be the same as last year. That's just a typo. Meters and castings, it was 26 grand last year.
Line 4550.
I'm gonna keep it the same. It says 25 grand. Other than that, there's no other changes on the expenses.
Why is the housing allowance highlighted yellow?
What?
Housing allowance is highlighted yellow. It's the same amount. Just highlighted.
For which?
Any reason?
For which line?
Housing highlighted on the page. The housing allowance.
It was up. That was highlighted for discussion because it wasn't used last year. We just to discuss whether or not we wanted to keep budgeting for it. I think similar to Eric's budget where he didn't have a chance to use his, we want to keep it in the budget to not
Right.
lose it.
Do we need an extra 1,000 to cover that 25 instead of 20 or 26 instead of 25?
For housing?
No, you just said you needed. You put 20. It says 25, and then for meters and castings, it should say 26 like last year.
Right.
So is that just a scrivener's error, or do we need to find
That's
another
just a
$1,000?
misprint.
Huh?
That's just a misprint. We will keep that the same.
Right, what I'm asking is, are the numbers at the bottom, depending on that being 25 or 26?
It will have to, it will,
Change that.
it will need to be offset, so he'll
Just
either,
have
That's what I was, okay.
Yeah, I caught that this morning.
so he'll either plus up the revenues or we can take it from their housing allowance.
You're gonna go legal on that one, though?
Yeah,
But you,
I'll ask him.
but you still got a surplus.
And then just one thing also for everybody to note, right at the very top, under the, for the pilot, the payment of taxes, Lee is not budgeting in a payment from the water utility to the general fund this year. So,
Why
so
not?
everyone's,
Why not?
he said because he feels like the strength of the general fund revenues means we don't need that contribution this year, but he didn't want y'all to note that.
Just because the general fund revenues are so strong, we also have a 2 mil increase in there to get stuff done. So that 60,000 is almost a mil. Just throwing that out there. I mean, I hear you, but we haven't done that in the past. So why do a one-time shot this year and a 2 mil increase and that? I'd rather, I mean, one or the other. I mean, does that make sense?
What's going on? I'm sorry, my mind went somewhere else. What is,
Very top of the page, the pilot, payment in lieu of taxes.
yeah,
This is the first year, you didn't put 60,000 in to go to the general fund like normal.
mhm.
We also have a 2 mil increase in the budget because we want to get 2 full-time firefighters. Then we got 2 full-time firefighters, another police officer and all that. But a mil is right around $60,000.
Mhm.
So we could, why stop taking that money? And you still have a huge surplus in the water department. So why not put the 60,000 in, which is kind of a, I mean,
2 mil, 2 mil MIL, not, it makes some people think $1 million.
yeah, I'm sorry. Property tax bill. You know, you can erase half of that property tax increase by just doing that payment in lieu of tax.
I would agree. Either that or accelerate the bond repayment.
Or, yeah, or something, I mean, I don't think that money just needs to go away. I think we can put it towards, you know, something that, yeah, like you said, like a bond repayment or something. It shouldn't just go away because, oh, we're healthy over here. We get accustomed to that. Let's save that for, you know.
All right, I know when he wrote this budget, the 2 mil didn't exist. That's,
I gotcha. That's what you're saying.
so if you guys, there's consensus, I'll tell them to put back the pilot and reduce the mill.
I would think reduce the mill because then it.
So,
we do our jobs.
from
We
my,
did our jobs. We took what was presented and we busted the property tax down a little bit, and we still added services that people, you know, that desperately need. So I would think for this one to you know, erase the 1 mil.
can we consider this, just for, you know, discussion, is that you can only raise the mill so much by state law? Do we need to be raising the mill? One reason is to do it for maintenance, just to keep up with.
Well, that was the other thing on my mind, and that's why I'm okay with, if we do keep the 2 mil, if we put it towards the bond purchase, you know, the bond amount, something else significant, then that's fine. I'm good with that too, because I do understand what you're saying. We need to step the mill up, and usually we only raise the property taxes like once every 4 years. So if we kept the 2, that keeps us on track, but I'd like to see that money stay in the general fund and just go towards knocking that bond payment down, or put it in for, you know, a fire truck reserve, you know, something.
That's acquiring an
substantial.
asset, it's not a disposable cost.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I'm good with either way.
what do you wanna do, take 1 mil off and add the 60, or keep the 2 mil and add the 60?
I would think the taking the mill off, it's funny. We know we're doing our job either way we do it. You know, we know we have the best interest of the city in mind, as whether we take the chunk out of the bond. But I think the general perception from the public, if we reduced what the mayor proposed by half for a property tax, it just, the optics of it look better. But I mean, the money's, we know we're doing the right thing, and whatever we do, it doesn't matter.
I think that also purchasing now, we have more purchasing power, the value of what the money is, or is it, what's, like, maybe there's gonna be an election in 2024 that changes what interest or what, inflation is now. I mean,
I wouldn't say like we buy anything, like I'm not trying to get a construction project or anything done, because I think the time is wrong for that. I would say either make, add it to the bond payment or reduce the mill. I'd be comfortable with either one of those. I think reducing the mill optically looks better, but it really doesn't.
I'd say reduce the mill. You don't tax more than what you need.
Exactly.
Return the money back. Don't tax more than what we need. Reduce the mill.
Or a portion, whatever portion of the mill it turns out to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can, I know it's close. What is one mill now?
He said it was around 70 some thousand.
So finding, I could probably find another like 10, 13,000 in revenues is not hard.
Right.
As Lee were talking about. We know that. I had 5 things marked that we could raise. He raised 2 or 3 of them. So we got some wiggle room. I mean, just to make it even, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's really what you think down there. You're not nodding one way or the other.
Yeah, I always go with what Lee asked for. I think he's a smart guy, but I see your point. See what you're trying to do, but I think in his half dozen or another, again, it's the optics of it. How it looks, I agree with you on that one. But I'd go back to Lee and just ask him again to say, do we need to do this, or can we do what you're talking about, and would it make sense?
I tell you what, let's do both. Let's put it in as the change, but let's ask Lee at the same time defend why versus saving the mill.
Because there's a reason he did it,
Yeah.
and he's a lot smarter than I am when it comes to budgets, and you have to lean a little bit over him.
Yeah.
He's also super conservative.
But and I'd
That's
rather
good.
be that way
Yeah.
than be caught with your
100%.
Yeah.
But then we also know that there's more juice to squeeze.
There's a little
out.
bit of juice in there. So I got you.
There's a lot of juice in the fruit.
All right, any questions on the expenses? We'll go to the,
And just before we log into the sewer, we will tell Lee to put back in the pilot and reduce the mill accordingly, but ask him why he thinks that's a good or a bad idea.
Hey, go ahead and let him look at those. I mean, I can say a couple revenues I think can go up, but we're talking about a couple thousand here or there to see which ones he would increase just to make it an even 1 mil.
I'm fairly confident that the only reason he dropped the pilot this year was because the general fund said help him. So I'll ask him for clarification.
Okay.
We'll raise the meters and casting from 25 to 26, and just to keep it clean within this fund, drop the housing allowance from 36 to 22.
All right.
Sound accurate?
Yeah.
What'd you say for 36? You gonna drop to 36 or?
Just drop it from 36 to
26.
2600, just to
Okay.
cover that $1,000.
Gotcha.
I think there were 3 at 800. Is that what it was, or no? 3 at 900 maybe available. A number of them,
I thought it was 600.
maybe 600. Okay.
do the sewer budget.
Hell, no.
Sewer, same thing, not much changes. We, usage fees did increase. That's because of the James Island PSD increases. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. On the expenses page, again, the treatment charges, that's for PSD increases. Next line is the contracts, again, that's the PSD increase their monthly service charge for the pump station maintenance. Otherwise, really nothing, big changes at all. We did have one increase on,
Contracts.
it was, for capital, for a new pump, PSDs, give us a quote of $14,000, just in case we have to replace one of the pumps at the library. That's the increase. We were doing about 10 grand a year, and they give us an increased price to 14,000. That's just in case the pump goes down. One of the pumps is about a year and a half old.
PSD has us up a barrel. Every which way we shake it. PSD has us up a barrel. And they just stick it to us left and right, man, no matter what we do.
But we buy a pump, they don't, we buy it straight from.
I know, I mean, just with everything, they're raising this, they're raising that, we can't park there, it seems like every time we turn around, PSD is all up in our business.
I still think we're getting a good deal on the pump station maintenance.
Yeah.
For the resources they have, 24-hour service, generators,
Battle Royale.
still, the SCADA system, I think that's a really good service. They do a really good job.
I just like that we're keeping a surplus revenue on the sewer line, which is unusual for municipalities of the line.
Yeah.
For all the other pump stations, they keep spare pumps in stock. So if one dropped out, they could just come that same day, drop one in and be done. Otherwise, really nothing's changed from last year.
With this, you and I have been speaking about, sewer lines and everything a lot over the past couple of months because of different issues. And you said JIPSD, we like contract them, they come out and like send the cameras in and map all that stuff for us. Since we have once we have a surplus, would it be prudent to say maybe we should get some of that equipment ourselves to do that, or just let them keep doing it?
Let them do it.
Okay. I know what they were charging us versus what we could just get our own thing for.
Typically, they don't, if it's a short section of sewer main, they won't charge me to run the camera through it. They just do that as a courtesy. If it's 100 feet, they'll come and do that, no charge. If they were to do the entire beach, it would be a different story.
Right. Like you said, they're coming out to do the east side line or whatever. What are they? I don't know how far that is.
I don't have them clean from Arctic all the way to the Catholic Church, the Indian.
What's that mean? Clean is a little different. Other than they just flushing hot water through it.
Oh no, they send a high pressure nozzle through there. They run about 5,000 pounds and go through there.
Nice.
It cleans everything. Nothing's left when it comes through. They'll shoot it uphill and then they pull it backwards.
Oh yeah, they did the same thing at my place. Cost me $2,200, but it was a short section of pipe.
This is a lot bigger, but
Right.
than what they use. It does a good job.
What's is it worth? So I mean, since we have a surplus, it's not worth looking at anything like that. You're the first person that doesn't want more toys.
I don't.
You put Eric up here, and Eric will say, "Yeah, let's get it, man. Let's get it."
I had experience, and they still do it. Those TV trucks constantly in the shop, constantly. In the back truck, they're probably $350,000 truck.
Yeah, surplus isn't that big. It's not gonna
They
happen.
charge me $300 for 3 hours. They could pretty much get it done in 3 or 4 hours.
Sounds good.
We're in sewer now, but I recall not too long ago you had requested sort of an app, so to speak, so you could monitor water pressure from your phone and be proactive about.
That was the SCADA system.
Did we authorize that? And if so, is it in here?
Well, we did an RFP and we only got two bids back, and they were both at 100,000. I had an estimate for I thought it would be about 60 grand for the CDL. I either have to re-advertise the RFP, hopefully get 3 prices.
Okay, so it's not in here.
And that's not in this, but that's being paid for out of our ARPA
Part of that grant.
Oh, yeah.
extra budgetary.
I'm working on that to see how we can kind of trim that down and get a little bit better price.
Nap time. Is it nap time?
No, it's pretty consistent anymore.
Sewer. Some time ago, I read an article or saw a news report that the city of Charleston, I suppose, major multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the disposable, so it should be self-dissolving disposable wipes that they clog the sewer facilities.
They do, the pump stations, yes.
if, to the extent that they were, they won out, do you think we'd see any relief?
We
Yeah.
haven't had that problem here.
Well, to the extent they have a problem, they pass that problem along to us in fee increases.
Mm-hmm, that's a good point.
Well, in general, yeah, they increased it.
But we're not a named party to that lawsuit, to those lawsuits. I wonder if we could,
That's the
I wonder if
first
we could
first
be.
to me. Never heard anything.
Well, if we were named in it, we would be a plaintiff.
Correct.
We're not involved in this.
Yeah,
They're
we're not involved.
So we can only hope that they're
just
equitable.
saying general increase.
But that's a good point. Some of the money that they're, increasing on us,
Yeah.
No,
We have
Charleston
increased,
was
we have
having-
increased fees, but if they see a $50 million settlement, my suspicion is that won't be shared with us in any way.
North Charleston was having a bigger problem with those in CWS.
I wonder why.
I don't know what kind of pump they use.
I understand it really gummed up their system to send divers down into that mess and untangle it.
Those things are not what they're advertised.
And unfortunately, probably ending up in
They
the
just
septic tanks
go
too.
to manufacturers to do something.
I'll put. Scratch that thought.
Any questions on the suicide?
No changes to the sewer budget early in this time?
No.
Sewer pretty much holds its own, going steady.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Where to next?
You ready to go? You ready to hit round two on public safety?
Round two.
There's round two.
Public safety.
Is there a tab called round two?
Let's see, we're gonna beat Andy up for now.
I gave you guys the job description you requested earlier. Get a copy of that.
Mm-hmm. Next sergeant.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The only changes that I'm aware of since the last time we talked were the addition of some of the stuff we talked about last time. And then also I noticed when I left, initially they were talking about adding the 2 firefighters to put one full-timer on every squad. There has to be 3. 2 only puts an extra one on 2 of the 3 squads. So the update includes putting 1 additional full-time firefighter on every squad.
That's reflected in the 5220.
So the new one has 3 full-time firefighters and a full-time police officer added to it. And it took the reserve away from the police cars because of the lease program we're gonna join. And I know we had some, I don't know if you picked up on this on the TV. We had a little bit of hesitations about that because of the lease program. Like, do we still keep some money in case it doesn't work and we need to buy new cars? But everything that I've heard since and talking to you this morning, you said that everything, that program's on the up and up. We're not gonna be dissatisfied.
That's what I've been told by somebody I used to work with. Although I have questions about the, I guess, and I apologize for not being at the last meeting, but, family calls and had to take care of some things. But, throughout my career, I spent a lot of time trying to take people out of the office and put them on the road. I took some sworn positions and made them non-sworn positions to get an extra police officer on the streets. It strikes me odd that we're creating an administrative position, and I guess I look at it and say, like desk sergeant and reports, and we get the daily report, and I see how many reports are made. And for a large jurisdiction, a desk sergeant probably makes some sense, because you might have a police officer that's traveling 30 or 40 miles to come into the office to take care of a report that somebody comes in. But here it doesn't strike me as being a very smart move, because the farthest somebody can be away from headquarters is 3 miles. We're only 6 miles long. And I know we've had a lot of talks and a lot of discussion about short-term rentals. And we haven't had, to be fair, we haven't had the work session on it. We haven't had the big discussion, but if we look at all the emails that are coming, I would suggest to you, Chief, that the priority would be doing something with short-term rentals rather than having a desk sergeant. And, you know, I come from an accredited agency. We were accredited, and there was a lot of rules and regulations and guidelines about chain of command. And you didn't have supervisory positions that just were hung out by themselves. There was always like a chain of command. And I would think that if a desk sergeant, administrative sergeant is needed that bad, it really should be an administrative officer or administrative, just a ranking officer who should report to somebody else in the chain of command. But it would certainly be my preference to have any new cops, because here's what will happen. We haven't had the full discussion on short-term rentals, but I think everybody's agreeing that that's our priority. We got to do something about short-term rentals. And if we approve this desk sergeant, then it's not going to be 3 months, 4 months down the road when we figure out what we want to do with short-term rentals. Then we're going to be looking for you to say, what are you going to do about it? And you're going to say, well, I need personnel to do that.
I can speak to that, and the mayor's plan, as we communicated, is that short-term rentals are completely outside of this budget cycle, because along with new positions or new fees, and any new positions for short-term rentals will be funded out of the new fees. So it's not necessarily coming out of this budget. So at the end of the day, when you guys decide on making up numbers, $500 fee for short-term rentals, and we have 900 licenses, $500,000 a year, that's the money we hire new people. We don't even have the job descriptions for those people yet. So we're not anticipating.
We do have increased fees though, right? Because we couldn't go up on short-term rental license, so we instituted a fee. What does that revenue represent?
That's gonna be what funds the new short-term rental
It's not
staff.
voted in yet.
Or we're trying not to mix short-term rental staff with this budget.
In the mayor's proposal, it's 1,000 for 4% and 2,000 for 6% properties.
And some increase.
No, that was the increase in short-term rental license.
No, sir, it's a separate.
That's a fee.
It's a separate fee.
And that goes in this year.
No,
It could go in this year, it's not guaranteed to go
We're
in
gonna
this year.
kick, we're
until
gonna
you guys
kick it around in the
discuss
work session.
It's not gonna be included, that revenue is not gonna be in this budget, and none of those expenses are gonna be in this budget.
right.
After, in September, or in August, or in June, you guys decide, come to a consensus on what the new fee is, then we'll know how much money we'll generate, and then we'll come back with a proposal saying the new fees are gonna generate $782,000 a year. This will hire 2 people, 1 to do business licenses, 1 to do nighttime code enforcement. So that's purely hypothetical.
Yeah, because that's way off.
So what is, I remember we couldn't change the business fee, the business
Correct.
license, because that's already set.
Right, yes,
So
sir.
what we did was we created a fee.
Right, yes, sir.
Has that fee been set?
No, sir, it's proposed.
Well, we gotta start collecting it in June, don't we?
That's not gonna happen.
We haven't
voted on it.
we haven't voted on the proposal yet. At all.
Yeah.
We vote in
The
June.
fees will not be approved by council on time for the budget cycle.
Right.
So I thought the fees was our workaround, that we could do with an increased fee now without infecting the
We
short.
can do that, but there's not time before the budget's adopted unless city council comes to consensus on the short-term rental recommendations before the end of June.
So you're saying we can't set the fee as part of this budget?
No.
We'll have to do, we can do a mid-year budget adjustment. We used to do them.
Not as
And
part
it's
of
gonna
the
cut 'em
budget
out.
Right now, right. It will be incorporated into the budget after it's passed.
But then it
not
won't be
right now.
collected again until next year.
Wouldn't be collected on any licenses coming after that.
So the 900, but if we were to adopt a fee now, a fee, not changing the short-term rental licenses, but to say that there'll be a short-term rental fee of $300, $400, $500, a fee, we could put that in on this budget
If it were approved
You
by
could.
council.
before July 1st,
2 readings.
Right, you could,
as part of the budget.
yes, sir. But
But that'd be,
we're trying to keep the 2 things separate.
Yeah.
Because there's too much uncertainty about the rental fee and the type, if it's even gonna pass, to build it into this budget. So the mayor's asked that we keep those conversations separate.
Which means for people that are anxious to have something happen as far as short-term rentals, that nothing will happen until next fiscal year.
The quickest, the absolute fastest that can happen is the July city council meeting.
You'll see some
Right.
action, but the numbers won't be in this year's fiscal.
Right, and in terms of the fee, the bulk of the renewals are happening right now. They were originally due May first, but that's been extended because of software failure. So all the renewals are gonna be done regardless of when you adopt the fee, unless you adopted it 3 months ago.
That's disappointing. That's disappointing.
We knew that from the get-go.
Yeah, but I thought there was low-hanging fruit, and I thought the mayor's proposal was to increase this fee now, and then that money would be revenue we could count on, so that when we approve, whatever we approve for short-term rentals, and we look to the chief and say, we gotta have better enforcement of our existing rules, that we would have enough money to say, here's a position to go ahead and do it.
No,
But-
that's not.
So functionally, there's really not a difference between adopting a new fee on July first or October first, because all of the renewals
Are happening
prior
now.
to, in theory, prior to May first. So all the renewals are gonna be done by the end of this month.
Hopefully.
So there's no way, the bulk of the licenses would not have been captured by fee no matter what.
Right.
Because renewals happen.
Do you think that county will, postpone business licenses again
I don't know.
into June?
I don't know. They're working diligently to get their software up.
It's still not up and
It
running.
wasn't as of yesterday. I checked it today.
Well, then, if we thought that short-term rental was a priority, and could we change administrative sergeant or administrative officer and put that in reserve for addressing short-term rentals in October?
As I understand it, the plan is to hire all new rental staff out of the pool of new money, and that the job descriptions for those rental staff have not been worked out.
Maybe inadvertently getting chocolate and the mayor's
It's not
peanut
all gonna
butter.
be.
And not here
new
for this
staff isn't
discussion.
gonna be people writing noise violations. It's gonna be some separate business person.
Sure.
that can have, some who's who does what. The short-term rental hasn't been determined yet.
Bill sheds light on the fact that if we don't see the revenue, whether it be 1,000, 2,000, or some other amount, we don't see that revenue until a year into the future, but maybe 3 or 4 months from now, once we've kicked around and passed the short-term rental regulation changes, we need to start hiring code enforcement people to
correct.
execute. So we'll have an expense before we have the corresponding revenue
It'll have
for
the
those
expense,
hires.
But then it'll happen in the same fiscal year, because the money will come in before June 30th of next year. The expense will happen first, but the revenue will come in.
That'll cover it.
It'll come at the end, because it'll still be in FY 23. It just will happen in April of 23.
Worst case scenario, I was just looking at different reserve accounts, that we have plenty of money to, if we needed to kind of kickstart a program and then replace it with the next budget. We got plenty of reserve banks.
That are getting rolled over every year.
Yeah, I mean, if we just need to borrow somebody to start a program like that, we've got.
Count them up real quick. You got a calculator?
Once we know the fee,
That's a lot, isn't it?
once we know the fee.
Yeah,
we'll be
You don't
able
want
to
us to
see
know.
and calculate.
So we will be able to
20
do it
of them.
this fiscal year. I get you now, even though the expense happens before, the revenue still is brought in before July 1st. On the administrative sergeant, the cost, what's the difference? That was just to be an officer, a patrol officer versus a sergeant.
It would probably be about 8,000 or 9,000 less for an officer, and I think the cost to go from a civilian to that is the 18,000 difference. So I would say, well, I would say just caution that, you mentioned putting in a reserve, like we couldn't really do that because this is just a plus up from what the current position as a civilian. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we can't just scrap it all together.
Sure.
Anyway, just.
Have you included the cost of a weapon and car?
I look at it the same way that you looked at, said about Lee, you trust his professional expertise and what he needs to do the job. And I look at it the same way, especially with public safety. They're a huge chunk of the budget. They're a huge potential liability, and we've never had any serious incidents. The police out here, I mean, yeah, you're gonna have a couple people mad they got a ticket or whatever, but I mean, we don't have problems that other towns have. They've been here for a long time. I mean, you drive around the city, there's a ton of signs out there that they support the public safety department. So what I'm saying is they're doing a good job, and we want them to continue to do a good job. And I look at the way in order to do that is to give them the resources that they ask for. And this is what Andrew's asking, and the way he's asking to do it, I don't would want to get in there, and then I would just, in conclusion, say you wouldn't have wanted to do it back when you were chief in here.
I disagree with both of y'all. I disagree with you and Billy.
Well,
Because I hear you, and I defer to them when I don't know or don't have any strong opinions. I always defer to department heads because they do know better than I do. But this is our budget now. This is our turn to ask questions to make sure that the money is being utilized in the most prosperous way possible for the people of Folly Beach. So I hear you, and I would defer to them if I didn't have questions. But I have questions about it too because I'm tired of badges being up in that office. I told my cousins I'm tired of it. I just think there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And I'm looking at the daily report, and you still have 3 officers out working a shift plus 4 up here. So what is there enough work to justify all that is what I want to know, because I want to say I want the badges on the ground. And I've been fighting to put another staff in here because I'm worried about night shifts where there's only 3 people working the whole damn shift. Not when you've got 4 people up here in the office as backup. That stuff does not happen during the day. That happens at night. It's a more dangerous situation at night. And if we had that many people working at night, I feel a lot better. Wouldn't fight for a full-time officer. But that's what I'm looking for is for the night guys. So I want to make sure that the responsibility is being doled out properly, and just that everybody's doing their fair share. I don't want the night guys to suffer because everybody's having fun during the day, and we have 8 badges hanging around. If it's necessary, I'm down with it. I'm fine. But I've got the same questions Bill does about it, and I don't think it's unfair for us to ask them at all.
No, I'm not saying it's unfair. I'm just stating my position. But yeah, I mean, the nighttime, I don't go out at night like I used to, so I don't see what's going on out there at night. It's dangerous.
Well, I mean, traditionally, yeah, your night times are going to be more dangerous than your daytimes just because, you look at the 2 a.m. and one of the worst things that happened to 2 a.m. closing, when we made all the bars, restaurants, and businesses close at 2, is you force everybody on the street at one time, and that leads to bad situations. I'm not saying it's definitely more dangerous than daytime, but it has the all likelihood of being a lot more dangerous than the daytime does. Just because it's dark. I mean, think about it. If you're gonna rob a place, you're probably gonna do it at night more than the day. If you're gonna commit crime, it's easier at night. Just generally. Then you add everybody that's been out all night, testosterone and alcohol fueled up, and yeah, you're gonna have issues. And I've seen those guys get surrounded by a fight that breaks out, and they get outnumbered real fast. So those are the things that I see at night that I worry about. And we have badges all on your desk, and as long as what they're doing is true, and I love having a person as a backup to be able to pull shifts. But I have some questions about that. If you could just have a general person to work up there Monday through Friday 9 to 5 and take care of all this stuff except for filling in, well, that might be the more prudent move, and put another badge on the street instead of in an office. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I do want to point something out, playing devil's advocate on the apples to apples argument, right? Because I understand what you're saying about having a bunch of people up there in the office, but y'all got to keep in mind that we're running a public safety department, which is not the same as just the police department or just the fire department or just dispatch. So if the city of Folly Beach had a police department, fire department, and dispatch, you'd have a hell of a lot more administrative people. So my argument is that you have 4 people that are doing the job of what 12 people normally would, because you have the same number of administrative people in a fire department, a police department, and a separate dispatch. So that's kind of a skewed argument, right? Because I understand we have people, but not only that, but those people are working CID cases. Those people are, 4 people to run an entire public safety department, basically 3 separate departments that you would anywhere else. It might seem like a lot because you're like, we have 4 up here and 3 on the street. But dude, it's not an apples to apples argument.
I hear you're coming from. Well, that's the stuff that we need to know. And that's why I asked for, what's Week's job description? What is everybody doing? As long as there's enough for everybody to do, then I'm fine with that. But now we're talking about putting another one up there to replace a secretary, essentially. I mean, she's an administrative assistant, secretary, and we've up to $18,000 to make it a badge. Whereas for that 18,000, maybe it's where they just keep that person as a non-badge person, let them do as much as possible so that we can put another badge on the street. That makes sense to me. That's where I'm going with it. I just want to make sure this is a justifiable expense because I knew we were up in a couple $1,000s for to make it a fair market assessment to try and get somebody in it. I didn't know it was $18,000. That's more than just upping it to find somebody for a job. That's half a new position almost. So that's.
If you think it needs to be sworn, I'm fine with being sworn, but I do question the fact whether it needs to be a sergeant or just an officer. And I would say I'd make it an officer now because I firmly believe that short-term rental is going to come and it's going to put more personnel in your department. And when that personnel comes, it might be you need a sergeant to manage a short-term rental unit or something. But I would say now that should be just a badge. There's no chain of command. There's nobody reporting to that person. You need somebody to do the administrative stuff. They're going to be a one-man unit. It doesn't need to be a supervisory level, and that saves the city $8,000.
I was going to ask, what's the difference? What can this person do as written versus just a normal officer? Is there something in here that you need a sergeant for? Because with the pay increase, it's not the lowest price sergeant coming in that's going to be sitting at a desk. This sergeant's going to come in making more money than the sergeant on the street. I can tell you, I'm looking at it. It's in the line. I mean, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but is that really necessary? I mean, you do. I don't know. But that was gonna be my next question too.
Well, I mean, ultimately, that's y'all's choice. It's your budget. This is just what came out of the negotiations between us and the mayor. And so again, that's your guys' choice. I do think having the main benefit of having that position be a sworn position is it does provide us additional help on the special events, holidays, weekends, and things like that. That is a fact.
But it doesn't necessarily.
So you as a person,
the job can be done as either. I guess I'll put it that way.
And if I could just speak up here a minute too, just being a person who's been in that office and done the things that needed to be done. A lot of this, paperwork, and you got to do the proper things. They have to be right, but also evidence rooms that pulls an officer off the street. Fingerprinting pulls an officer off the street. Getting stuff, paperwork done again, or picking up a prisoner to bring, all these things that this person could be assigned to administratively helps take the relief off of the people that are on patrol. So there's I look at it, and I see your point, but I look at it as, he could bring in an administrative and a civilian, but for $18,000, he's getting a whole nother officer in the office and outside the office in needed times. Because again, we fluctuate Saturday, Sundays, night times. The sergeant could come in late on a Monday, come in at 12, stay till 9 or 10 and give somebody else some relief. So I think it's a flexible position that they've got, that they're asking for, but also someone who can do a lot of things and hopefully well, because they have to be done right the first time. You cannot mess up. And they need that help. I mean, the amount of traffic that comes in and out is tremendous.
I get you for all that stuff.
Yeah.
So are we saying that the previous person was underutilized? Because I think that responsibility needs to happen regardless.
She was overworked for what she.
Well, if she was overworked, and we're putting in much more responsibilities because you have a badge now, and you can pick people up, you can do fingerprinting. That stuff she couldn't do before. So now this job just gained a lot of work.
She was doing a lot of things that probably, could have been done by the officers, is what I'm saying. But she took up a lot of that slack.
But you're making my point for me then.
Okay.
So we're adding tasks to this position, and we think one person's gonna be enough for it when one person was over. You said they were overworked before, and we're adding tasks to this position because they have a badge. They're gonna be overworked again. So eventually we're gonna be like, oh, we're gonna need something else. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. I mean, but it's still,
You think one
it's
person's
a
gonna be able to
full-time
do the
position.
job. If you're gonna use them on a Saturday for a festival, that means they get a day off during the week, I'd imagine.
Right.
So what's gonna happen with all that admin stuff that person's in charge of when they're gone for the day? I mean, it doesn't get done. So this stuff's gonna pile up. I mean, these are things that I'm a little more worried about as we go through it. And then you do take this person, I like that we have the backup ability for them to be a badge. But then if you get stuck and you make them a badge more often, then we're still stuck with, oh my God, then we're still gonna need to hire somebody for this job. Because the other stuff isn't getting done. You know, the clerical work isn't getting done. So I'm like, that's, you know, it's starting to get a little torn here where we're at. Because if they were overworked before, they're definitely gonna be overworked now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
to you?
That they were overworked before, and that the position allows them to do more things now, is your point.
Yeah.
So if they were overworked
Yeah.
before, they're definitely.
The whole benefit of this is we're gaining somebody with a badge to do the extra backups and all that, but if they can't get their primary job done, there's no sense in talking about the extra stuff.
Again, I think just the low hanging fruit is to make it an officer, a standalone officer. That almost gives you more flexibility, because if you need somebody to go back in the road, you're not throwing a sergeant in with a regular patrol sergeant, then you got two sergeants. You have a rank and file, you got a soldier, and you can put that soldier anywhere you want him to do anything, and that saves the city, what did you say, 10,000?
It's 8, I think,
It was 18.
18 for the whole thing.
I can tell you.
I think it was 8. He said earlier, somewhere around there.
So it's 18,836 as written, and it would be 10,909.
8,000. I still favor having as many civilians do as much administrative work as possible, but if you think you need a sworn, then I'd say a rank and file sworn would fit the bill. And if you end up needing a sergeant to handle the administrative stuff of the short-term rental committee, which might actually happen, then we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get to the short-term rental stuff. In the future, you might have need for a sergeant, but I don't think this demonstrates the need for another supervisor. That's just my opinion.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And it's just on math. How is it that a sergeant is 18,000 and an officer is only 7,000? Because there's already some salary money.
It's the difference in price.
Yeah, the difference.
Difference in salary.
Yeah, those aren't full positions. Those are basically what it would cost to go from what we were projecting as a civilian employee to move to the sworn position.
Okay, so to go from the civilian, it would be 7,686.49 for an officer, and 18,811 for a sergeant. What is the benefits of having a sergeant compared to an officer? Does it matter? Is that 8? I don't have a calculator.
Basically, what I was, as a civilian, I was still projecting, or we're going to request a $4,200 increase over the current salary to be a competitive hiring position, right? So that was going to be the baseline ask. In order to go from what it is currently, right? So 35 and some change to the desk sergeant, that's where you get that 18,836.31.
Okay.
If you were to go from the civilian position to just an officer position, that would cost would be $10,909.94.
It's only looking at salaries though.
Just salaries.
So if you start looking
Everything else
at,
is the same anyway, because you already have benefits on both anyway. They're both full-time positions.
but you have to buy a car, a weapon, police equipment,
Yes.
and the cost for outfitting a sworn officer is significant.
Yes. So basically, the way it was going to be worked in is using what we currently have, right? So there wasn't going to be any additional purchases per se. Does that make sense?
It's still much more expensive to bring in. But I mean, you think you need a cop? I'll give you a cop, but I'm just not sure it needs to be a sergeant, and I don't see anything here that shows it needs to be a sergeant, and
I think saving it, I'm with you. I think if you want to go to just a regular badge and save that money in anticipation of future things coming up, I think it would be a very prudent idea. Because we know that things are gonna come up. As much as we're keeping them separate right now, it's going to happen.
He's gonna grow a whole unit with short-term rental.
I don't think he's gonna grow a unit with short-term rental.
I bet he
There's gonna be another unit of short-term rental department, but it's not gonna be on him. There's no way. It can't.
The code enforcers, does it have to?
If we're changing everything to civil instead of criminal, it doesn't matter. That's why I think it's gonna fall under somebody else when we get down to it.
Administration.
But we're still gonna have somebody with them that they work with. You know what I mean? So it won't fall under him, but he's gonna have to work with somebody.
We're giving you no answer here.
Nope.
Well, no, I mean, again, it boils down to, this is what came out of the meeting with the mayor. If y'all feel differently, then, that's, the prerogative that y'all have. I mean, it's not, I don't take things like this.
Well, what's the biggest difference to you? I mean, just personally, between a regular officer and a sergeant? Why get the sergeant if a regular officer will do? Just tell us.
I guess my argument is that the job can be done by either. I do think there is some benefit, even though I agree it is an administrative position, there are some benefits for sure to have it as one position. One of the things that we do as your administrators, which is completely different than most agencies, is we rotate working weekends. So you'll see everybody from me to Lieutenant Upton to Sergeant RT, First Sergeant RTs working weekends to help cover. As you know, with Robert Wheat works a rotating. He works Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's his schedule. So that's another person we added on weekends, which is what we did with the ACO. So to address this exact issue, right? So we're trying to
Deal with the ACO. Who's the ACO?
No, that's what we transitioned the ACO to the support services.
Right, but he's not doing any ACO, right?
No, I'm saying after we transitioned, it was ACO. So we transitioned it to.
We don't do any animal control anymore.
We do tons of animal control, but it's all shared by everybody. So, if we get a dog call, they send whoever's available versus having just one person run a dog call.
Gotcha.
Smart.
No, it's very smart. I think it's a waste to have a full-time dog catcher.
Yeah, because all she ever did was follow people on that street. Her boyfriend would follow them on the other street.
One
They used to
person
stalk
a long time
people.
ago that was just specifically a dog catcher. I get what you're saying.
And I told Chief, you're following people around.
We had first-hand experience getting cat out of a tree. They were very useful. Yeah.
So we do have to kind of come to a consensus here, if you guys want any changes incorporated into final advertising budget. So, kind of need guidance on that. If we have to get these to Lee, and he has to put them in the budget, and then we have to advertise it. So if y'all want changes to that line item,
Just an officer, $8,000 less.
I think just the officer is a better move with a chance for a raise, but moving him into that position as a sergeant, I think is a little heavy. I would feel I like just a normal officer, and we'll see how the next couple months goes.
I'll say go with the chief's recommendation.
So it seems like it's.
so it would just be a consensus today, and then you can actually vote, when it's budget time. But
Right.
in terms of planning and advertising the budget, I just need a consensus.
Well,
We have
without-
two officers.
Without hearing,
Well-
without hearing from Eddie, you're.
Well, but we're also missing a council member and the mayor, and it's his budget.
It's his recommended budget to you, and now it's in your hands to change it.
With a couple limitations that I just pointed out, I can't make a final decision.
It doesn't look like
I
we're
think
getting
that
a
every-
consensus. We'll have to leave it with
Everything
the
that's been
sergeant.
said
We'll
makes
try to change
sense.
it.
Everything is correct, and you can't choose
So
one.
just as for presentation purposes, it'll be presented as a desk sergeant. So at the meeting, if we want to make an amendment to change it from a desk sergeant to just a desk officer, that'll happen at the meeting, and we'll see who votes for it.
Okay.
So think about it between now and then, because there aren't enough head nods in either direction. So we need to go with the mayor's recommendation first, and then we'll just make them. Because trust me, that amendment is going to be made. So that's how I would think about it.
Okay. No, I will.
And then that gives Catherine time to
I
look
will.
at it, and Tim time to think about it too. I know it's his budget, he recommended a sergeant, but maybe after our discussion, he says, oh, you know what, it really doesn't need to be right now, let's go with an officer.
But our hands are tied a little bit on consensus building when,
Yeah,
there
of
are
course.
5 of us out of 7.
It's okay, hey man, we're used to this. We're used to it. That's fine. It's all great.
It's all good. Maybe I just,
Anything else in public safety to change?
I just want to think about it.
I think I was good with everything else. I love that everybody has reaffirmed that lease program is the way to go. I mean, you were kind of skeptical, like it just seems too good to be true. It seems too good to be true.
Well, you know, initially when I actually refused to meet with them because I thought it was so ridiculous. I'm like, there's no way. And so I refused to meet with them, and the woman, one of the people who's our account representative, lives on the island or has a house out here. So I actually like that kind of. It's in her best interest to do as well. And so I said, fine, I'll listen, but don't waste my time. And after talking with Dahl and Brandon called a bunch of them too, man, it was just one after another. Like, dude, it's legit.
What?
The lease program, like the managed fleet versus.
I did have one star in here that we didn't go over, and that's the e-bike.
The mayor cut that.
Huh?
The mayor cut that. I'm not sure why it wasn't.
Oh, he already cut it because it's in here.
Yeah, the mayor cut that.
Sweet.
So on that lease topic,
Operating supplies.
5,200.
233.
So that one might need to be adjusted too. Unless I can be quick.
Well, while we're here, do you guys want to put it back in?
What?
Okay, the e-bike. Yeah, I'm not, that was out before.
Yeah, it's still in the
Yes.
still in the 8,000 number. Right around.
That's 4,000, you think?
Yeah. Well,
Go towards that 72,000.
I just think that, I mean, well, no, not 72. We already got 60 of it. So there's 4 extra. We got 8 extra if we bust back now. That's it, and we're done. That's your complete bill right there.
What else is left?
so on the topic of the leasing of the police vehicles, I believe there was a takeaway. You were going to look at the contract to see how much time they would be required to provide us with notice that they wanted to terminate the agreement, in which case
Yeah.
we might have to go and buy vehicles quickly.
That's correct. I'm waiting on that. They're having a general staff meeting today. They're actually going to come today. They have an all staff meeting.
So fill us in on this while we got a second. I think if we're done with everything, fill us on this lease program a little bit. So how they'll come in and give us a whole new fleet of cars at once, or just a couple. We'll drive 3 a year. They'll give us 3 a year, like we have been until we have all of theirs in.
Yeah, so basically, like I mentioned before, you cannot think of it as like your standard personal lease. This is literally just a cash flow method, right? So what they're doing is you'll get the one that I gave you guys. It's basically like 4 to 5 a year, right? Is what they're going to rotate out. And the whole concept is using Enterprise, who's a massive, obviously massive vehicle kind of company, fleet management company, both on the rental side, whatever. They figure out the maximum value time. So basically they rotate your fleet out in order to get the maximum amount for the sale, right? And then for us, what's beneficial is it allows us to switch our fleet over quicker than maybe we normally would have been able to. And I mean, they get percentages, like someone asked too, the question of like, how do they make money? They obviously make percentages on pretty much every interaction. That's built in, so it's not an additional cost, but that's how they make their money. I was talking to a guy, he's like, they basically have small percentages built into the situation, and that's how they, plus they're into building relationships. They know that most of the time governments are large customers.
Get some better deals if they're getting stuff in bulk.
Well, not only that, but yeah, a lot of times they can buy direct from manufacturer. It's similar to like, companies get, I don't know, not actually kickbacks, but benefit to being a huge customer to a company, right? They get stuff at lower leverage, exactly, lower rates, things like that when they purchase vehicles on their other side of the house.
So we're looking at 4 or 5 a year. So that'll be what, like 4 years, maybe 5, does that include y'all's trucks?
Yeah, that's everything. And I think it shows, looks like, by 2026, we're completely,
Completely in them.
completely hybrid. 2025, that year, there's only 4. So we'll be pretty close to that point. It'll probably be the 4 newest that we have now. And then after that, it's just swapping out, getting the most they can for the thing. And then the other benefit, again, we mentioned before, like currently I have to buy from one dealer. I don't have the option of one. They could have 100 of my car that I want over here, and I have to go over here. Whereas these guys are not bound; they can buy it anywhere in the country for that matter.
And we still pay for all the upfitting and everything,
No,
right?
it's built in that cost.
It's all built in the cost too.
That's correct. Right now, they're allocating 13,000 upfit per vehicle. We don't quite spend that. So those costs will probably actually come down a little bit. Right now, we're averaging right around 10. It might tick a little due to inflation, but we're currently about 10. But I told them with these estimates, I wanted everything to be extremely conservative because I didn't want to come in here and tell y'all, we're going to save X and then it's really not that. So I told them I was like, I want conservative.
Got it.
So that's kind of where we're at. Like I said, every place we call, man, they're
And so, I mean, you talk to like the managers of the program, whoever's responsible for their division. Might sound like a weird question, but how do the officers, the actual users of all the vehicles, how do they like everything out work well? I would imagine it would. They're getting a car quicker. They like the bells and whistles. I didn't know if it just.
No, there were a few of them that I know we probably talked to that said, the guys and gals love it because, they're not having all the same problems. And one of the benefits is the entire time we're going to have that vehicle in our fleet, it's under factory warranty. So you're not having these major overhauls. Like, I'll tell you, since we've had cars longer, I mean, we're spending big bucks this year on keeping some of these old cars running right now.
Sell it for them.
I just sold a 2014 Dodge Charger with well over 100,000 miles that was not in good running shape for almost $7,000. Yeah, it's crazy. The market's crazy right now.
We still choose your fleet though, right? They don't.
100% your choice. I can tell them this estimate is based on 100% hybrid. I don't think we can really intelligently get away from trucks at all. There is some benefit, but I told them that I would like to look at hybrid because Ford's coming out with hybrid. And then I even told them potentially in the future with the admin cars looking at full electric, but that was something we balanced down the road.
Yeah, you'll definitely need some trucks or beats. We got tow stuff and
Yeah.
washes up. Somebody got to put it in the trucks.
But luckily this year Ford is offering that same hybrid motor in the F-150. So anyway, I told them I wanted to be 100% hybrid at a minimum and then try to mix some electric in there. So that's that. And this also does include the truck that's in the fire department as well, the rescue truck.
Yes, is that everybody?
Is that it?
The only other thing that if we find some extra money somewhere is we haven't put anything in hours in a while. Whether we do it for I know I get hats and stuff made to give out in the community for good neighbor award stuff. So something like that. Or if people need more just personal apparel or council discretionary, we haven't put any council discretionary in a while either. We're on 10.
I thought they ticked up this year.
I think your clothing allowance.
Clothing allowance went up a little bit, so we can all get some new stuff.
But everything has to have City of Folly
Beach.
Beach.
T-shirts on. Oh, I get those hats made. I'll eat that up.
Every piece of clothing I got has City of Folly Beach on it.
Probably won't have
Closet's
that
that small.
much extra
What?
money.
Closet's that small?
I'm saying everything that I get from clothing has City of Folly Beach patch
Yeah,
on
it
it.
should.
So, I'm trying to get a count. I think there's 6.
That was the big copy of it goes on to the first half. Yeah, before that.
I'm gonna get a count of all the open positions, and he's gonna have to budget those at full family. Because at this point, if you don't go with the new policy, it's harder. He has to prepare a final version of the budget. And right now, he's got all the open positions at single employee. If that policy's not gonna stick, he needs to budget them all at full family. We might not spend it, but he has to budget for it in case they get it.
Right.
So that's gonna bump it up by about 9,000 per open position. I found 6 or 7. I don't know the total numbers of open positions, but I imagine the pilot money we put back in, for example, that's probably what that's gonna, how those two will balance out.
We were talking about using that pilot money to take out a mill.
Right, but you're also talking about not adopting a new policy.
Right.
And so,
Okay, well, if you want,
so,
I got a couple more eggs.
yeah.
Business licenses can easily go up.
Alright.
I know we don't like to do this, but, your parking tickets are way out of line, that can easily go up.
He raised that one 50,000.
No, he raised paid parking 50,000. Parking tickets are different. I know we don't like to use parking tickets, but that number's way short.
Depending on the, presentation tomorrow, parking revenue could go up. Of course, we're limited on what we spend that on, right?
Well, not legally, but generally, yes, we need to have it rationally related to providing visitor services.
Probably gonna place some money somewhere.
Depends on the presentation.
Right.
I'm not a, it would be a good presentation, because I don't really care to raise those right now. I mean, just,
So if needed, I'm gonna just tell you.
everything else going around us for raising, let's leave something alone.
Take that bill out. I'd rather go up in parking than add a bill.
Me too. If we had to, but I'm telling you, I think there's ways we can, we don't, if they're anticipating paid parking being the same when they present this budget to us. So the rate increases, that would easily add, I mean, shit, we'd probably take both of those mills out if we did that.
There you go.
I saw it.
Well, he is gonna review some of their increased expenses. That's tomorrow. So,
Usually, we go through this every year, like, we have a discussion about what do we need to improve in revenue, and Lee looks at it, he shakes his head and wrings his hands and wipes his brow, and then he comes up with the money we asked him to come up with, so.
Comes
that's
up
why
with it
I
every
did between
time.
last week and this week, and he might have to do it again after this week.
It's time for him to wipe his brow and.
Yeah, tell him he's not sweating, he's doing it wrong.
Alright, so I'm gonna go over all this and y'all make sure I didn't miss anything. For planning purposes, we're going to assume that we're gonna plan for the health policy not changing. He's gonna go back and rebudget full family health for all open positions. That's how we do it. Whatever extra costs that incurs, we're gonna try to set off by business license and parking ticket revenues. Okay. And as research, we'll ask him, what are the different percentages of health insurance that we pay?
Well, if you're sending this to Lee, ask him like, yeah, I think those two accounts can easily go up for sure. Tell him to wipe his brow, like Bill said. He always looks at it and says, okay, well, I can squeeze something out of this. Tell him to squeeze.
All right, gotcha.
Because if he squeezes signs off, and we're good.
All right. So for health insurance, we're gonna build in current rates and just ask him some questions for information. And then I'm sorry, my sheets got out of order, but in 5,200 operating supplies, we're gonna cut out the e-bike. I found a note from last time, I don't think we addressed, I'm asking about our investment fees for our beach preservation, how much they are. And the water expenses, we're gonna add back the pilot and reduce the mill. And we're gonna raise meter casings to 26,000 and offset that by lowering the housing allowance by 1,000. And facilities operating supplies, I'm gonna ask you, or Eric probably, to do some truth checking on the price of a new Christmas tree. And 6,000 capital, we're gonna move down the new door for the community center to the new side entry door for the community center line. In public works, we're gonna move the Center Street reserve contribution to the traffic study reserve contribution. In public works contracts, we're gonna lower temp labor by 40K. To 40K by lowering it $35,000. We're gonna add that back into public works salaries for a new position at $17 an hour. Any other changes that I missed?
I forgot one. We were talking about the other day. I know you were gone. I think Billy and I were with pet helpers. We talked about instead of upping them, add 1,000 for birds of prey and 1,000 for keepers of the wild, because they end up coming out and dealing with our issues on the pet helpers. And essentially, pet helpers usually writes them a check for us anyway, so it kind of it doesn't raise their money, but it raises their usable money, and we give keepers of the wild and birds of prey $1,000 a piece to show our support for them dealing with all our wildlife issues.
She said that if we did give her an increase, that she would use that
She'd
increase
use that
to give
anyway.
them a
And when we
check.
brought it up the other day, Tim was like, well, if we're gonna do that, let's make it a separate line item so people know that that's going to birds, keepers of the wild and birds of prey, whatever they are. Make them line items instead of just adding to the pet helpers line, just make them separate line items.
Yeah.
And those each at $1,000?
That's, yes, sir.
All right.
Each, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Any other changes to the most current version for next week?
It's rollover money, that's not included in the budget now, so for every dollar that we roll over from this budget to next budget, that represent a savings in next year's budget?
It will wash itself out. It'll show as revenue and expense. That's how he explained it to me. So it'll just wash itself. I'm gonna ask him for the grand total so we know how this net sheet is.
I mean, there's some things that we didn't do last year that we plan on doing this year, it shows up in the budget this year.
Right, and it will show up on a line item here, it's transfer in. It does it all at once.
But that means,
I think
that is a
that's actually
savings then, right?
That's what I was, yeah. It shouldn't be in this budget
If it's rolling
if
over,
it's rolling over.
because you're counting it as an expense this year.
Well, it would be as an expense and a revenue, it would just be zeroed out.
But right now,
It's
as
not
your
showing
budget is,
revenues
it's not
right
showing it washed out, right?
If it's not showing revenues right now, then it
Yeah,
won't.
you're right, he doesn't have it in here yet. We'll just make sure.
As for that though, okay, so that's like 25,000 for one, $12,000 for the other. We don't have to worry about looking for anything else if that happens.
Let me just make sure he doesn't have these things in here. I think I know the answer. Because there's probably $100,000 of things we're rolling into this year, next year.
Yeah. There go old bells.
Now we're talking.
Yeah,
That's real money.
I'm gonna ask you where they are.
Two.
I'm gonna ask him what the procedure is, because he wants that rollover resolution done at the same time we adopt the budget, so I know we've done it before, I asked him what we're doing.
Give the chief a captain if he wants.
Yeah. Any other changes from today that you can make?
Amazing.
So process wise, we're gonna make these changes, come up with a balanced budget, and if it's unbalanced, we still have to advertise it next weekend, this coming weekend. So what I'll probably do, if there is, for example, an excess in revenues, and this, it puts all these numbers in here tonight, and it shows $5,000 of revenues, we'll just stick those in like a reserve as an expense, so y'all can decide if you look at the meeting. So we have to advertise a balanced budget, and we have to advertise a balanced budget.
I agree. So do we need to do TVPC now? Are we voting on that tomorrow night?
No, you've already approved the TVPC budget.
I thought there was something on tomorrow night for TVPC budget.
Okay, yeah, there is, it's separate from this.
Okay.
So you've already approved TVPC's budget for this year, and tomorrow they're asking you to amend their budget by an extra $50,000 so they can contribute to the kayak launch at the boat ramp.
Okay.
When does the site of that change from what I thought was on the other side of the river to our side?
The
That makes
site's
sense.
never changed, so there are two, one at the boat landing and one at the clam farm docks. But the one at the boat landing's always been,
Closest to us now, not across by, Marshlands. See, I always thought it was at Marshlands.
so the one's proposed at the boat landing and one at the clam farm dock. That one.
Is the clam farm still alive?
No.
I thought we couldn't do the clam farm launch.
I didn't think we'd ever been told we couldn't do it, it's just we didn't have the
We just
money.
put it on hold.
We didn't have the money
For
to
that.
do it.
Oh, I thought we were gonna put it on the right of way that was abandoned, and it turned out that the right of way was abandoned, went to the clown farm, and we couldn't do it.
They say in 50 years we'll have to build a bridge back where it was.
I'll go back and
80 years
research,
ago.
but I believe.
Do you remember that conversation?
There was some confusion, but we do have room to put it
Yeah, I
in.
don't remember it working out against us, but we'll go back and make sure.
Keep in mind, once the kayak launch is in place, there will be people with cars that don't have trailers behind them looking to park in that lot.
Well, part of this adding new parking
New parking, just, what is that, just restriping spaces? to
up on the
accommodate those
grass,
cars?
like if you go in towards the road, up on the hill.
We're gonna build like a hip wall or something?
They got it all permitted through DOT as part of their annual plan.
Yeehaw.
That's 4 years talking about
Because
that.
we passed an ordinance, we
Good
passed an
one on
ordinance
that.
with regard to that
But we're
parking.
not, bro.
Where there's no
I think about
trailers,
3 in before you got
you
here.
can be ticketed.
I think
We adopted terms and conditions.
Yeah, cause I was due
So
1:30.
I'm gonna send these changes to Lee, he's gonna make them, give us a final balance budget and advertise.
you email us whenever it gets done so we can kind of look and see what we got left or what we need to mess with.
And then something not for y'all to decide right now, but just so you know, if you saw the email today, the mayor had to leave town, so the work session tomorrow on short-term rentals is canceled. It needs to be rescheduled, so tomorrow we're gonna ask y'all for some dates, and I'm gonna email this to you. The mayor gave me his availability for next week, all of these are during the day, and I'll email it to you. So just between now and tomorrow night, think if you want to meet next week, if you want to do it during the day.
You guys, can we maybe have some night meetings, cause there's some people,
So that's the next thing I was gonna say. So if next week during the day doesn't work for you guys, it could be the next week at night, whatever time works for y'all. Just think about it between now and tomorrow.
some of us gotta work during, I gotta work during the day.
I
I gotta
really-
make a certain quota or else.
I definitely want to be present and participate. I will be out of the state, Montana, Wyoming, Wednesday through Monday of next week. This upcoming Wednesday.
Like 2 days through next Monday.
Yeah, let's shoot for
Not
the
that,
week after
sorry.
tonight.
They
I
got
think
tomorrow.
allow the public to
7
be
days
here.
from now, for 5 days out.
Alright, cool.
Yes,
Just
cause that's
check
the
it out.
other thing.
Check your
Yeah, allow
calendars.
public
Sounds
to
like
be
next week's not ideal, but check your calendars for maybe the week after next, daytime or nighttime. So we'll point y'all guys.
And I'm not, I understand everybody has schedule conflicts, and I'm fine with nighttime or moving around. But I don't wanna go too much further with it, and I'll tell you why. One of the things I really enjoyed about this whole short-term rental thing was the process that we're dealing with right now. But we're gonna talk about it tomorrow night at a work session, then have a whole month before the voting meeting to take that document, once we have a little more consensus on it, and get more input from the community, and then bring those questions back at a voting work session. Or even if we had to have another work session on it before, like, that same night, it gave us plenty of time to get with people and all that. And I know that I've been fielding phone calls, emails, and meetings for the last 2 weeks straight. So I don't want it to get to something where we have our consensus meeting a week before the voting meeting, and we don't have any time to talk to people in the public about it.
And I think one thing, I do think that the June and July adoption schedule is ambitious.
Well, that's what, if we can't have a work session, get consensus for another couple weeks, then I don't want the first voting meeting in June. Is really all I'm saying. I want to make sure we have at least 3 weeks to be able to talk to people in the public about whatever our consensus is. Because the mayor's proposal's been out there for a month, and everybody thinks it's ours. We've had to correct people, and it's just taking a lot of work. Once we get our consensus version out there, then that's the one we need to either sell to people or get their input back on, this, that, and the other, because that's the one we'll be voting on. So just keep that in mind. And if we don't have this work session for a couple weeks, then we should be voting in June. We just need to push that into July. It's just setting everything back a little further.
And I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay.
The longer this next work session gets delayed, the whole thing gets delayed, and that's not bad, it's just a fact. And so that's another also reason I think to consider an evening meeting for the work session, just so that not only you guys work, but a lot of the folks who live out here work, and they may be able to attend an evening meeting.
I do have people say that whenever you guys deal with something really serious, you don't talk about it on the regular Tuesday night. That we all know Tuesday night, the second Tuesday night, is a council meeting. you always have these meetings on a random Thursday at 11.
Well,
And
we can't let other people's work schedules dictate what we do because we'll never get anything done. So we have to have meetings when we do, and it's our job to talk to people in the public, their job to know what's going on. Nobody can say they didn't know. Just like when the cops pull somebody over, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. You know, it's just not, as long as you give people ample time to do it. And that's why I don't want this rush where we have a meeting and then only a week to discuss it with people. I want everybody to get ample opportunity to get with us and us to get with them. That's all I'm getting. Exactly what I'm saying.
I agree with you. So
Thank you.
All right, so we'll ask y'all that question tomorrow night.
6:30.
6:30.
6:30 tomorrow. All right.
but you know what? I'll tell you this. The Ethics Commission has a lot of rules
Yeah.
that if you